I spy with my little eye something rectangular. Did you notice it? Did you spot it? Today's lesson is going to be about exploring all different kind of geometric shapes, but through a different lens. We are going to be looking at this through the lens of Pablo Picasso. Pablo Picasso was a Spanish artist. He had a time period known as Cubism. And in his Cubism work, he has a lot of different artwork that has different angles and shapes and geometric figures. And we're going to be using some of those artworks in discovering all of the geometry that goes along with it. We're going to be looking at angles, we're going to be looking at perpendicular lines, parallel lines, we're going to be looking at the difference between a parallelogram compared to a trapezoid. So in today's lesson, you're also going to be creating a geometric world. Think about that, a geometric world similar to what Pablo Picasso did in his works. Stay tuned on the next one so that you're able to see more of what today's lesson is going to be about.
Thank you, Miss Anaya, for that great game that we played, learning and seeing where the geometry is at around just there at the McNay. You having fun at the McNay? Well, I thank you, and I appreciate you allowing me to come here to your lesson to speak and have a special guest with us. But did you know, Miss Anaya, that where you're standing with that thing that you use for the game, what it's called? There's actually a name for it. It's actually a piece of art. The artist's name is Tony Smith, and the name of the piece is called, I might get this wrong here, boys and girls. So, Miss Carrie, you might want to help me out with this one, but it's called Asteriscos. Is that correct, Miss Carrie?
Asteriscos.
Asteriscos. Very good. Well, boys and girls, we're here with the Math Cubism lesson, and we have a special guest named Miss Carrie. She's the educational director for the McNay Art Museum. So we're going to learn a little bit more about Picasso and Cubism and take a visit to McNay. Miss Carrie, it's yours.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kate Carey. I'm going to share my screen with you all because I have been thinking about what you're studying with Picasso and Cubism, and I wanted to share a little bit of information about Picasso and Cubism at the McNay Art Museum. And here you see the outside of the McNay, and we will take our virtual field trip and check out the inside of the McNay and look together at a work of art in the McNay collection by this artist that you're studying, Pablo Picasso. This painting he made in 1954 is called Portrait of Sylvette. So I'll just let you look for a second. I bet as you're looking, you're already recognizing all those geometric shapes that Picasso uses to make Sylvette's body, her hands, her sleeves, her collar, and her very prominent ponytail. So you see that all here. And then you'll also notice that he uses a really monochromatic color palette of gray and black and white. And so you're seeing that monochromatic cubist palette in this painting, A Portrait of Sylvette. I wanted to give you a little behind the scenes imagery of Sylvette. She was a real person, and she and Picasso lived in, she and Picasso lived in the south of France in the 1950s. He saw her and thought that he would like to paint her, and he invited her to his studio. And one thing I should share is the painting that he made of her in the 1950s came well after Picasso had pioneered the Cubist movement. So one of the things I wanted to show to you is what Cubism looked like in its early phases. You could think of this as kind of the infancy of Cubism, and you see a lot of the fractured forms You see that monochromatic palette that we talked about. And you see the ways in which Picasso really challenges the idea of what we see. We sometimes say challenges representation, because even though this picture is called Man and a Guitar, it's a little bit hard to make out all of the parts of the man and all of the parts of the guitar, but you can kind of get the essence of that. I'm seeing sort of a guitar shape here. I'm seeing lots of things that look like guitar strings. And then I'm seeing what looks like a figure mostly in the center of our Cubist portrait. So this one that we're looking at, Man with a Guitar, is from 1915, very early on in the Cubist movement. And then we, in the 1950s, Picasso revisits those Cubist ideas. He meets this girl, Sylvette, and we see a photograph of what she really looked like. We see some of his other paintings of her, some large, some smaller, some very realistic, and some a little bit more Cubist. One thing I want to point out is this rocking chair that she's sitting in is likely the same rocking chair that she sat in for the portrait that's in the McNay collection. There you can see how he paints just that texture of the back of the rocking chair here and make a visual comparison to what we're seeing here. One of the things that I think is really cool about this portrait is that it's a real person, and she became an artist too. She came to visit the McNay about 20 years ago, and when we asked her why Picasso painted her with no mouth, she said that maybe because she was quiet and timid, but he also painted her with eyes that look like you can see them from the side and from the front at the same time, and that's one of the things that you often see in Cubist pictures. Are you seeing all of this geometry in the way in which he shows her clothing and the way in which he shows her sleeves here? Yeah, he's very, very interested in geometry, it seems to me. I just wanted to share a comparison of some other images of Sylvette. So like I said, you can see this one at the McNay in San Antonio anytime you visit. These other two are not at the McNay, but I wanted to show you a photograph of what Sylvette looked like and a painting by Picasso where he paints her in a very representational way. It looks so much like his subject. And then this painting on the far right is from the Art Institute of Chicago. And again, he's really picking up on those Cubist ideas. Look particularly at the way in which he paints her face. Again, showing profile and frontal at the same time. So thanks so much for your time, and I appreciate getting to spend a few minutes with you and sharing one of my favorite works of art at the McNay Art Museum.
Thank you, Ms. Carey, for allowing us to take a virtual tour of the museum and to show us a little bit about Picasso and his painting. I think that's a great story. Are there some times that the families and kids and the staff could go to the McNay for free at the museum?
Yeah, thank you so much for reminding me. So the museum is free after 4 every Thursday, and then the first Sunday of every month, the museum is free. And the grounds of the museum are always free, so you're always welcome on the grounds of the McNay. And even though we have some construction going on outside, the museum is open, and people are required to wear a mask and have temperature checks, but the museum and the grounds are open.
Very, very good. Well, I'm excited for the kids to learn more about the Cubism and Picasso, and then taking this little trip to connection with Spain and San Antonio. But I want to thank you for your time, and once again, families and staff and kids, let's go check out the McNay together, or let's check it out. I think it's a great time for us to go out there and see the McNay. But let's turn it back over to, wait a minute. Listen, did you move? Are you by that pond over there? Oh, you know what it's called? Miss Carey, what's the name of that pond with the squares again? What's that called again? There's a name for it, isn't it? Go ahead.
That's right. That's another work of art in the McNay collection. It's an artist named George Rickey, and he really liked to make kinetic sculpture that moves. So that one is horizontal column of 5 squares, and you see that one, probably you see it moving.
That's awesome. I do see it moving. Miss Anaya, back to you. Go ahead and tell us about more about geometry and what the kids are going to do for the activity. Back to you, Miss Anaya.
Geometry is all around us, from the artistic design here at the McNay Museum to the windows in the building behind us, and even the sculpture that we looked at earlier over to the side. Geometry is everywhere. In today's lesson, you guys are going to be constructing a geometric city through the lens of Pablo Picasso, which, if you look behind me in this window, is one of Pablo Picasso's work is located here at the McNay Museum. In your resource folder, you're going to find a folder with geometric vocabulary cards. The vocabulary cards are going to give you the definitions of all kinds of geometric shapes, from the difference between a parallelogram and a trapezoid to a rectangle and a square. Once you have had an opportunity to explore those vocabulary cards, then we want you to construct a geometric city. Think of it through the lens of Pablo Picasso. When you are constructing your city, think of things that you can use around the house, from a piece of toilet paper roll to a cereal box to a tissue box. Just make sure that you get your parents' permission to use materials first. After you are done creating your city, we want you to make sure that you label it. So label the difference between if it's a parallelogram, which is a four-sided polygon with two sets of parallel lines, or if it's a trapezoid, which is a four-sided polygon with one set of parallel lines. Label that on your geometric city. Take a picture of it, send it to your teacher, and share it with us. We would love to see the geometric cities that you have created through this journey as we continue to explore Spain.